I think it might be important to talk about the 265-pound elephant in the room. I'm not Chip Bennett. If you couldn't tell, I'm not Chip. I wanted to let you guys know, Pastor Chip, as of Friday, tested positive for COVID. And he is doing well. Let me assure you, Pastor Chip is doing well. He has very mild symptoms. He's isolating. He's going to be okay. And I promise you, he will be back here blowing our theological minds in no time. But he sends his love. And I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you, I'm very thankful that I serve on staff at a church and I serve under leadership that knows the importance of the next generation, that knows that we want to be vulnerable, we want to be honest, we want to be transparent, and we want everyone to know what we're struggling with. Come on. So it is my greatest honor to come and talk to you today. You know, Chip, he called me as of Friday about 7 o'clock at night, and he goes, "Hey, Mike, you're up." And I went, okay, all right. I went and ran and hid a little bit, but I was like, okay. And you would think that my heart would just freak out, but something in my spirit lit on fire. As I started to think about our church, I started to think about where we are in our culture, where we are in our nation. I started to think about the things that we're struggling with and how we're all walking in a difficult season in our lives. Because look, I'm gonna tell you right now, if I ask the question, hey, for who in the room did 2020 and 2021 go the way you planned it? Not a single hand in the room would be up. And if your hand is up, I can promise you, you're probably lying. Like nothing went the way we thought it would, right? Nothing. And so as I started thinking, okay, what does our church need to hear? Because I step back and I go, okay, Pastor Chip just gave the kids pastor 18 hours to stand in front of the church and teach them something about the Bible. What do they need to hear? Everything could go wrong or nothing could go wrong. We'll see how it goes, right? And so I'm like, okay, God, what do our people need? And I felt it deep in my spirit that they needed to know that we serve the God of the middle. That we serve the God who is walking in our difficult seasons with us. That he's not on the other side of our struggle going, all right, you get through this portion, I'll be over here waiting for you. He's not always the God that comes before the difficult season comes. He's the God that shows up right in the middle of our pain, in the middle of our struggle, in the middle of the fire that we might be walking in. God is showing up right in the middle. And I believe that that's what our church needs to hear. And as I started thinking, okay, what am I gonna say? Like, how am I gonna say this? What am I gonna say? God brought something back to my mind. I thought about little, 9, 10-year-old Michael and how he used to love roller coasters. Like that was just his thing. He loved it. And I remember when I was about 9 or 10 years old, I went on a family trip to a place called Six Flags. Have we heard of this? Everybody knows? Okay, so we went to this place called Six Flags, and I actually learned at like 8 o'clock this morning that Six Flags is not just a Georgia thing. Like I felt really special until somebody broke that news to me this morning. So we went to Six Flags in downtown Atlanta, Georgia, and I was 9 or 10 years old. I had my mom with me, I had cousins with me, I had all these people with me, and we get on this ride called the Superman. The Superman. And I get up on this thing, and I get up there, and I'm sitting on the 7th or 8th row, and the whole point of the ride is you sit up in this seat, and you pull the lever down, and it locks into place, and then it picks you up, and you fly head first on this roller coaster like you're Superman. Yes, it is as terrifying as it sounds. And so I get up on this ride, and the first row, they go, and they take off. I was like, oh, that was cool. I like that. And then it's okay, 2nd row, 3rd row. And they got to about the 3rd or 4th row, and then I realized something. My lever wasn't locking in place. And at, 9 or 10 years old, I'm sitting there and I go, okay. That theological mind that I've got at 9, I'm sitting there and I'm going, this is it. This is where I meet Jesus face to face. And I look at my mom and I'm like, hey, it was great knowing you for 9 or 10 years. I'll see you on the other side. Like, I knew that this was not going to end well. I didn't even start yelling. I started screeching. You probably could have heard me from like the Turner Field Atlanta Braves Stadium 30 miles away. Like, it was freaking me out. I lost my ever-living mind. I lost it. And so row 4 and 5 and 6, they all, they lock into place, they take off, and I'm going, okay. I accomplished a lot of good things in my life, I guess. Like, I made it through kindergarten. I'm like, it's cool. I did what God put me on this planet to do. But then something happened. We got to the row right before mine, and my lever locked into place. And I lifted up head first and took off on this roller coaster. And you know what's cool? It was awesome. I'm still seeing a counselor about it to this day because it was traumatic, but it was awesome. Like, I enjoyed it. I really had a good time. And then God brought this to my mind, and I started thinking, how many of us treat our lives like I treated that roller coaster? We forget who's in control. We forget that, like, hey, this thing was created to last. Like, that is terrifying, but it wasn't made so that it would like fall apart, right? Like, God knows what he's doing in our lives, and a lot of us forget that. And studies are showing it. It's showing that 75% of adults say that they have struggled with some form of anxiety over the last year. And for good reason, right? Like, I'm not standing up here going, don't be anxious. Like, I'm not that guy. I'm telling you, 75% of adults have walked through pandemics. They've walked through all of the difficult things that have happened in life. They've walked through these valleys. 75% say they have struggled with some form of anxiety over the last year. 51% of adults say that they have felt afraid, lonely, or scared most of each day. 40% say that they are uncertain about the future. 39% say they are sad and depressed. And this next statistic is the most heartbreaking of all of them. 87% of those that were asked say they are God-fearing, church-going Christians. So here's what that does in my heart. That makes me say, the Church of Jesus Christ as a whole, Big C Church, is not preparing people to deal with uncertainty. We're not equipping the saints to walk through struggle and to walk through pain. And so what God brought to my heart was Daniel chapter 3. Daniel chapter 3, it's the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And in this story, we hear this guy, King Nebuchadnezzar. If you know anything about history, this isn't even Bible, this is just straight history. King Nebuchadnezzar was a brutal dude. He was a guy that he typically would go into these foreign lands, and he would just decimate everything that he stepped into, and he would take prisoners, he would take people back to his main empire of Babylon. And so every empire in history, they all are known for something. They all have something that was their thing. And so you have the Assyrians, who they were known for the way that they crucified people. You have the Persians, they were known for the way that they killed people, the techniques that they used. And you have the Babylonians, they were known for the way that they brainwashed people. Because King Nebuchadnezzar, brutal man, he would go into these places and he would say, hey, we're gonna take some prisoners. If they're in poverty, if they are very, very lower class, just kill all those folks. But if they're held in high regard in whatever that land is, let's take them prisoner. We're gonna bring them back to Babylon. We're gonna take their first form of identity, their name, and we're gonna change it. We're gonna put them in high regard. We'll put them in good positions in the military and in the government. We're gonna feed them well. We're gonna clothe them well. We're gonna take care of them. We're gonna give them all of the luxuries that they could possibly want in life, in hopes that they would then go back to their people and continue the process. That's how he did everything that he was gonna do. And so in 597 BC, King Nebuchadnezzar comes across this place called Jerusalem. And being the brutal man that he is, he takes his military and he surrounds the city. He cuts off all of the supply lines, he cuts off all of the food that's flowing into the place, and he just waits for people to die. And once that goes for a little bit, he then takes his military in and he does what I just said. He kills all of the lower class people, and he takes 4,600 prisoners, men, women, and children, and he takes them back to Babylon. And when he comes back to Babylon, he realizes there's three that separate themselves from the pack: Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So he gets everybody back and he goes, okay, here's what we're gonna do. Because, he in history, not even Bible, in just straight history, he believed that he was the equivalent to God the Creator. Like, talk about humility, right? Like, none of us have walked around with that type of attitude. Like, he walked and carried himself in the kingdom as if he was God incarnate. He says, so here's what we're gonna do. He gets everybody back, all of the prisoners back, and he says, I'm gonna build a 90-foot statue. And being the humble person that he is, he goes, I want that 90-foot statue to have my face on it. And then he goes, I'm gonna go up one more step, and I want it to be covered in gold. And he goes, oh, I'm not done, I got one more. We are going to worship this idol of gold that looks like me. Talk about humility, right? And so he issues a decree and he says, here's what we're gonna do. This 90-foot statue, you're gonna worship this thing morning, noon, and night, every day. And if you don't, you're gonna die. And these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, said no. And that's where we're at. In Daniel chapter 3, it says, now when you hear the sound of all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego reply to him, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had something that I think we can all take time to learn from. They were completely countercultural to what was happening at this time. I mean, like, put yourself in that headspace. Like, you have been taken out of your homeland, put into a foreign land. 4,600 of your brothers, sisters, and children are all now bowing down to this idol, and they are falling in line with the current of culture. And they said, no, we're not doing it. Said, we're not doing it. Let me ask you a question. How are we doing with being separate from culture? Be honest. How are we doing? Because here's what I've learned is that the body of believers needs to be known for what they're doing, but they also need to be known for what they're not doing. We need to be known for the things that we go, that is against what God says, and I'm not doing it. And they knew this could end bad, but here's what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego knew. If the way you're carrying your life as a follower of Jesus is not causing you to stand out from the world, you're doing it wrong. That might have stepped on a toe or two. I love you. If you call yourself a God-fearing, Bible-believing, church-going, saved Christian, and you look like what's going on out there, you're doing it wrong. He goes on, he says, but even if he doesn't, these are some of the most powerful words in all of the Bible. This is the type of faith that doesn't need the facts to be felt. This is the type of faith that goes, I can't see it. I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know how this is gonna go, but I know my God can save me. He can pull me out of this fire. But even if he doesn't, we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold that you have set up. Read this with me. Obedience cannot be judged by the perceived outcome. All the rational thinkers, all the logical people in the room were going, okay, every action has a reaction. Like, if I make a decision to do something really dumb right here, it's not gonna be great here. I'm gonna make a decision right here that's gonna affect my wife, affect my kids, affect my children, affect my church, affect our nation, affect our world, whatever. Every action has a reaction. But can I suggest to you that it's a little different in the kingdom of God? Because we know the things that God has called us to. We know the things that God has asked of us. And they knew, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they knew, I've got two options. I can either bow down to this idol and forfeit my relationship with the God of the creator, the God creator of the universe, or I can say, no, I'm not bowing down, and this might end really bad. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego knew something that we need to learn today. Jesus is worth everything. Everything. There's nothing in this world that equates to Jesus Christ. And he goes on in verse 19. Then Nebuchadnezzar was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and his attitude towards them changed. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than the usual and commanded some of the strongest soldiers in the army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So these men, wearing their robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes, were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. The king's command was so urgent and the furnace so hot that the flames of the fire killed the soldiers who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, firmly tied, fell into the blazing furnace. Isn't it amazing that we serve a God that can use the rage of men to still get his point across? Like, this is a moment for us to go, he just turned this thing up 7 times. This is not good. But God goes, hold on. Go ahead, turn that thing up 7 times hotter. I'm gonna show you just how powerful I am in the middle of this struggle. Come on. This is the God who said, hey, David, I know you can't fit in your brother's armor, but I want you to grab a pebble and you're gonna go kill that Goliath. This is the God that says, hey, Daniel, I know that this doesn't make sense. Track with me. I hear you. I'm gonna put you in a den with a lion, and you're actually gonna be okay. That's the God that we serve, that uses the rage of men, that uses the things that we think are meant for our harm. He actually intends them for our good. And he goes on, he says, then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire? And they replied, certainly, your majesty. He said, look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods. This is some theological implications here. This is that phrase, son of God, is what theologians call a Christophany. A Christophany. This is saying this is a non-material form of Jesus in the fire with the 3 men. Before Jesus ever came as God incarnate, as a baby in Bethlehem, he showed up in the middle of the fire, in the middle of their greatest need, in the middle of their greatest trial and greatest struggle. God showed up in the middle of the fire. He goes on. Then King Nebuchadnezzar leapt to his feet. Weren't there 3 men that we tied up and thrown into the fire? They replied, certainly, your majesty. And he said, look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound, unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods. Nebuchadnezzar then approached the opening of the blazing furnace and shouted, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out. Come here. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire, and all of the advisors crowded around them. And they saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair of their head singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angels and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own. Therefore, I decree, hear me, we have made some massive leaps with King Nebuchadnezzar. Like, this is the Joker who went into Jerusalem and goes, hey, let's kill everybody. Let's take all these prisoners. Let's destroy the temple. Let's do all these things. And now he says, I decree the people of any nation or language who says anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be cut into pieces and their houses be turned into piles of rubble. For no other God can save this way. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the province of Babylon. Amazing. There are some things in this text that I think if we hold on to, we could really have some transformational moments in our faith. We can really do some things that will transform the faith that you have in your life. Point number one, God is a God of the process. God is a God of the process. Here's the difficulty that a lot of us have. I often confine myself, and I'm gonna speak just to me. I'm the only one here. I'm gonna speak to me. So here's what I often find in my own life. I take all of these methodical steps in my faith, and I'm going, well, I've got the 4-year Bible degree, and I'm serving at a church, and I'm being an intentional neighbor, and I'm doing the things that are stirring my affections for Jesus, and I'm reading my devotions and reading my Bible, and I'm taking time to pastor people and love people and pray for people, and then I look up and go, why have I not made it farther than this? I might be the only one. I'm be honest with you. I go, why am I not farther along in life? Why have I not made it? But what I'm learning is the writer of Hebrews says that we serve a God who is the God of yesterday, today, and forever. So what that tells me as it relates to the process of our life is this, that the same God that is with me in this place was with me in that place, and he's with me in that place. So as I continue taking methodical steps in my faith and continue walking and continue doing all of the things that I know Christians need to be doing and tracking the right direction, and I feel like I haven't made it far enough, can I tell you, a good thing for us to do would be to look up and turn around and see just how far our God has brought us. That's where the difference is made. The difference is not in the destination. The difference is in the journey. The difference is in the journey is where you learn how to be more like Christ. You're formed more into his image. It's in the journey that you learn how to love people better and push people towards the cross of Jesus Christ. We all know if you are a Bible-believing, God-fearing Christian, you know how this story ends. We know what the destination is. We're gonna be looking at Jesus face to face, but hear me, we got some work to do while we're on this earth. We got some things that we can be doing. So I'm asking you, enjoy the journey, because it's in the journey that we are shaped and molded into all that God would have us be. And look, hear me, please hear me. If you don't hear anything else, I want you to hear this. There's a lot of people walking through some difficulty and walking through some struggle. There's some people in this room, you got some sin that nobody knows about. You got some struggle that no one knows about. You got some real secrets in your life. You got some fires that you're walking through, some valleys that you're walking through. We as Christians, just as humans, we have the ability to be internally crumbling, and we still look like we've got it all together. But what I know is that God is not asking for your perfection. He's asking for your progression. He's not asking you to have all the answers to everything, because he already does. You're not gonna bring a solution to one of your problems and he goes, oh, I never thought about that. That's a good one. It's just not gonna happen. But what God is asking of us is for us to keep stepping, keep trying, keep progressing. Are you gonna fall? Are you gonna stumble every once in a while? Absolutely. Like you're never gonna get it perfect. I can assure you, I love you. No one in this room is perfect, and that's okay. God's not asking for us to be perfect. He's asking for us to progress. There's a writer who I love. His name is Bob Goff. And he has this ability, like he's just a beautifully worded writer. And everybody in this room has that person where you go, if I had to spend any amount of money to spend 1 hour with this person, it would be this person, right? This is my guy. And he says this, every day, God invites us on the same kind of adventure. It's not a trip where he sends us a rigid itinerary. He just simply invites us. God asks what it is he's made us to love, what it is that captures our attention, what feeds that deep, indescribable need of our souls to experience the richness of the world that he made. And then, leaning over to us, he whispers, let's go do that together. The beauty of our Savior is not in the destination. The beauty of our Savior is in the journey. It's in what we learn about the nature and heart of our God as we walk through the middle, as we walk through the journey. Point number 2, God is a God of protection. Just a little backstory about me. So when I was born, my parents gave me up for adoption. And so I spent the first 5 years of my life in foster care. And at my birth, my biological mother, her rights were taken from her, and my biological father, he just gladly was like, hey, y'all can have them. I wasn't wanted. But I got pulled into a family that gave me a new name, that gave me new purpose, that chose me. And I was raised by a really remarkable woman. I was raised by a single mother who put me through school, who raised me, who helped me become and grow in wisdom and stature and favor among men, as the Bible says. Like, she really played a massive part in the man that I'm becoming. And as my foster mother was now, after I was adopted, my foster mother became my grandmother. And her daughter became my mother. So about 2 years ago, I was pastoring at a church in downtown Atlanta, and I was teaching, much like I am today, and I was between services, and my mother calls me, and she says, hey, there's been an accident. I said, okay. I said, what's up? She says, well, your grandmother, she went in for a routine procedure. She had a stroke on the table. There's blood on the brain. She's on life support. So everything that I knew was crumbling. Everything that I had built my life on was crumbling. The woman that helped me become everything that I was meant to be is gone. And anyone that's been through something along those lines, anybody that's walked through struggle, you know you can only see what's happening right here. You can't see what's happening down the road. And so I taught the 9 o'clock service. I got that call. I went and taught the 11 o'clock service. I have no idea what I said at the 11 o'clock service, but after I got done, I hopped in the car and I took off to go back home. And as I got to the hospital, I walk into the hospital room and it is what you would think it is. Sad, heartbreaking. But I think God knew what he was doing, because I have a family full of people that fear only Jesus. And we sat there together and we pressed into Jesus and we worshiped and we spent time with our Creator. And I'll be honest with you, in a way that I never have. In a way that I've never felt the need to, but now my whole life is crumbling and all I've got is God. And so as the only pastor in my family, I'm standing there going, I got nothing. I can walk through other people's stuff with them. I can counsel other people through things. I can take care of other people when their family members are in the hospital, but this is my family. God, what are you doing? And as I sat there and we're listening to some worship music, and I remember Waymaker came on the radio. And I felt God say it so clearly. Michael, have you not seen everything that I've done? Have you not seen how I brought you out of a really bad situation on the day of your birth, and I brought you into a family that chose you? Have you not seen how I called you to preach the gospel to everyone that has ears? Have you not seen how I called you and made you mine? Have you not seen it? Do you not think that I can't work in this too? And I just remember sitting there and I just go, I got nothing. But I remember going, okay. And that's a faith right there where I had to say, just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, I don't understand it, but I know it to be true. That's when you go, I know the facts and I have the facts. I don't need to feel it right now. I know God's in this. I know that God's in control. That's a faith that is very difficult for people to walk in, because walking through trial and walking through struggle, it really is a fight. I was walking in the middle of one of my most difficult seasons, in the middle of one of my greatest struggles, in the middle. And what I learned is this: God brought to my heart Isaiah 43. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. My greatest desire for today is to get your eyes off of you. Struggle will come. Difficulty will come. There are things that you're gonna walk through. There's seasons of fire that you're gonna walk through. And Isaiah is telling us, and he's preparing us for this. He's not saying if, he's saying when. When you pass through the waters, when you pass through the rivers, when you walk through the fire, it will not set you ablaze. When, not if. So to the person in the room who you're struggling, you're really walking through some difficulty. You don't know what tomorrow looks like because you're just focused on the fires of today. Can I tell you something? God is not finished with you yet. He's not. So the person in the room that's really walking through some secret sin, and you got some strongholds and some bondages over your life and you don't know what to do, can I tell you? God is not finished with you yet. So let me ask you this question as we get to point number 3. God is a God of the middle. And I know you're going, hey, Mike, your third point is the same title of your sermon. I had 18 hours, just, forgive me. And so point number 3, God is a God of the middle. So let me ask you this question. What are you needing God to show up in the middle of today? What are you walking through that is creating a lot of difficulty for your life? Have your kids been wavering? Are you waiting for your kids to come back home? Is your marriage struggling? Maybe you lost your job. Maybe your finances have really taken a hit. Maybe you need somebody to show up. You need God to show up in the middle. Maybe you need God to show up in the middle of your relationship with Him. But God shows up in the middle. And so today, I felt the need to help shift our perspective. But I think before I shift perspective, we have to shift our faith to this thought. What you are walking through is not happening to you. It's happening for you. That's a hard thing for us to wrap our head around. It's hard to think that way and to really shift our gear and shift our mind and shift our thought processes to this. But can I tell you, whatever you're walking through, whatever your fire looks like, whatever your middle season is, it is not happening to you. It's happening for you. Because in the same way God shows up in the midst of our greatest trial, He shows up because it is in the middle that we become more like Him. It's in the middle of our pain. It's in the middle of our struggle. Could it be that we serve a God in heaven that even when life is out of control, He is in control? That He brings calmness to our chaos. That He brings rest to the weary heart. Could it be that we have a God who says, I don't need to show up on the front end and save you from the struggle because I got some work to do right here, and I don't want to show up over here because I don't want you to feel that I'm not an ever-present help in time of need, so I'm going to show up here, in your fire with you, in your struggle with you, in your pain with you. Because it's in the middle that you're becoming more like Him. Can we stand and pray together?